were down at Stewart tonight.
Oh, yeah?
They came in,
Are we ready?
300 pounds
Ready.
plus.
Oh, wow.
Good morning, Hickory Sunrise.
Good
morning.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Should be Steve.
Steve, please.
Oh. All right, let's bow.
You got it all
Thank
done.
you for this day. Thank you for life, health, and strength, Lord. Thank you for the minds and the hearts around this table who believes in the Rotary motto of service above self. Lord, we pray for this club. We pray for food that Michael's eating. And we just pray for a successful day. We thank you and we magnify you and glorify you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
What about that food?
Oh, thank you for all that other food too.
I know, right? Everybody else?
Your food don't count.
Well,
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. All right, several items. Gavin, Ron is not here. Is the Letterman secure?
Well, there's a breakdown in communication because nobody told me Ron was not going to be here. So luckily I'm monitoring everything all the time. So,
Good. So we're okay.
so we're okay so
We're
far.
lucky.
All right, that sounds
If anything
great.
changes, I'll let you know.
If you haven't given Jake his food, please do so. Anybody that's failed to do it. Okay, several issues. Rick Van Dent.
Sir.
First issue.
Oh, my.
All right, Hickory Daily Record.
Okay.
You have to tell me if your service above self.
No question about it. All those
Absolutely.
teachers who have been served.
Absolutely.
No
All right,
question about it.
everybody, there's $1 that goes in the bucket. Donald Hicks, it looks like him too. So it really is nice.
That good looking fella on the cover?
Yes,
Is that a
sir,
GQ
that's
model?
it. There you
Is that
are.
a GQ model?
Everybody put the buck in.
Look at that.
Cash it in. Cash it in.
Don't take the picture home, Jenny. That'd be certain divorce. You know, you put this on your wall.
I tell you what.
That's
it
right.
would be-
I'll take 10 back.
Yeah, that's the kind of math we can make. That's that modern math.
That's right.
Oh, before you. Here, I need to take one.
All right, when Steiger gets settled, we'll continue. All right, Steve, I need $1 from you. Michael is offended with that comment, prayer, and I need $1, please.
I think God's chuckling right now.
It's funny now, Steve.
He is offended, I can't believe it.
No, no.
It just got funny.
Richard, it's a struggle, I want you to know.
I don't doubt that.
All right, we'll get changed, all right, good deal. All right, continuing on.
Leave it out.
Now, this is simply confession time. We talk about it, anybody can stand up, cost you $1, but in order to proceed with speed, I'm gonna handle some of these because they are confessions. Austin Pierce.
Yeah,
Any confession? All right,
I left the video camera sitting in the corner after setting it up for last week's meeting, and luckily Donald grabbed it. I did call the next day to make sure I called Wayne first, which was a mistake. What was I thinking? But then I called Donald just to make sure. So
I just want.
just on one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I came prepared and I apologize.
All right, good deal. At least it's recovered.
I haven't seen
All
the
right,
video.
Richard Tucker, stand up, please. You have 1 minute to tell about a fishing trip.
That's our little thing.
Actually, I thought this was confession, since I was supposed to bring bulletins today, and I
Well, I
forgot
have
the bulletins.
Well, that's
That's another $1.
That's
$2.
Two. The first one was fishing.
Thank you,
The second was a bulletin.
He said stand up.
All right, good deal.
You wanted to take the weight off your wallet.
All right, Bob,
Sir.
you sent out a memo about the video being up.
Yes.
Okay, and I have a typo in here. In that, did you see that?
Yes, I saw that too.
And
Compliments of WordFit, whatever that program's called.
All right, good deal.
Too much.
Okay, now, the last item, I have to confess. All right, I made a presentation, and I was so impressed last week. Several of you missed this and were absent. Okay, and I was under the impression that Rotary International, because of 16 years as your sergeant at arms, this was a special award. And according to what I had received, one of a kind, and I announced one of a kind, well, and I made a comment at the last, but Reinhardt picked this up at Dollar General. Well, I apologize for that comment. Now, rather than having one of a kind, specially made for me, do you have any idea how many of these?
I have to confess, I was prepared to say, I saw the video after we got it up, and I was, by the way, everybody, thanks for saying hi. I looked at the invoice for that, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't lie because I could get caught. That is serial number 49999, and so that might be a few before that one. So
Okay, at least around 50,000. So anyway, I'm not that special.
If
Okay,
you sign it,
I'll pay for that.
I told you to sign it, that'll be the only one around.
That's right. Good deal. All right, it's all yours. Any other now? Okay, Bob.
One
Excuse
more
me.
announcement, Richard and I will be back the middle of September, so last meeting,
Oh,
middle of September.
the word is Bastika.
Mastika.
Bastika. Okay, when you're in Greece, you've got to use that word. Special drink.
Uzu.
No, you don't want that. You don't want that one.
That's a Uzi.
You don't want that.
Uzi.
Michael, I'm sorry. What is the comment?
Well, I was sitting right there.
Yep. All right, Joe. Michael, and I'm gonna have to tell you this. He was sitting here, and he got up,
To greet somebody.
and you got in his chair. But I didn't. No. But I told him once you get up, you've lost your seat. So therefore, you were okay.
So I'm gonna just say hi to everybody from now on. I'm gonna stay in my seat.
All right. It's good. All right. Jenny, glad to have you back. And I saw halibut. Were you in Alaska? Homer? Okay. The Homer spit.
Yeah,
Okay. Know exactly where you were.
What were you fishing for,
Okay.
the hell of it?
That means,
for the hell of it.
I know what exactly, that's what they.
Everybody around the table right now is talking about Jenny's fishing trip. By the way, I'm Donald Hicks. It's nice meeting you.
Nice to see you, sir.
It is
I
so
understand
good.
you were on the paper.
That's what they tell me.
There you go.
That's what they
Above the fold.
Above.
Above the fold.
Above the fold. Oh, I have never thought of that. And there's a gentleman down there in a super Black Panther t-shirt. It's some superhero. Some superhero. With the S on his chest. Anyway, I think his name is
Mikey?
Yeah,
Mikey.
Wimberly. So welcome back to him too. Let's see. Job number one. We have a special guest today, Mr. Richard Allen. God bless you, Mr. Richard Allen. It is always a pleasure to see you. I've had at least 2 family members that took your class and they say that's the best class. I'm thinking about going back to school just to take your class. So he said you're right, and that's confident. Okay, who would like to introduce Mr. Eller?
Mr. Steve.
Mr. Weller.
Excuse me.
You need to charge him.
Superman with Black
You can't
Panther.
get it.
He don't know Superman from Black Panther. He don't know hell.
Mr.
Does he realize he's here today?
It's the notoriety of being above the fold.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Oh.
Dr. Jenny White, thank you so much.
Well, my guest today is Mr. Richard Eller.
Yes, sir.
Richard is a professor of history at Catawba Valley Community College. He is also a historian in residency at the
Historical Association of Catawba County.
Historical Association of Catawba County. Richard did his undergraduate work here at Lenoir-Rhyne, his graduate work at UNC Charlotte. Richard is no stranger to us. He's given us a program on polio. I don't know whether you did the Piedmont. You may have done the Piedmont with us as well. I've been trying to get Richard to join this club for the last 5 years. I'm not giving up on him, but he's not an early morning kind of guy, but he was gracious enough to come. He's going to talk to us this morning about a pretty unique team that was formed in the Ridgeview community here in Dignity. With that said, please join me in welcoming Professor Richard.
It's almost a year since we saw you last, because we're coming up on the polio Day anniversary.
True,
So that means we're approaching your anniversary.
Well, I may see one of you or so again later today, because I understand we have a meeting. There is a group that is pulling together Rotary groups to commemorate the epidemic with something special in town. That's going to meet out at noon at Nagano. Today?
Yes,
okay.
Highway 70.
Yeah, so I got asked to be part of that because I do think it's important that Catawba County recognize and remember what went on there. But actually today, in terms of this subject, I have to give Mr. Hunt all the credit because he's the one who told me about it. And right as we were finishing the polio documentary, he said, "You ever heard of this?" And I went, "No." And he proceeded to give me the nuts and bolts of what happened with this football team. And I, at that point, said, "Well, why hadn't anybody ever done anything on it?" And he said, "That's a good question." And so we started to investigate it. What this is a football team that was able to, in 1964, completely run the table. Now, it has happened with other teams, but it certainly hasn't happened under these circumstances. So let me just go through a couple of things that you guys, being members of the community, already know about Ridgeview for the most part, but also this team. We're looking at a really kind of a city within a city that Ridgeview was as far as Hickory, in that it was a community that was pretty self-reliant, had a number of businesses that were that catered to the community, and some from outside as well. But what it was, like a lot of communities, was centered by its high school. And that high school that started in, I think, 1928 is kind of what reflected the community. And so this is a shot of the front of it, which is no more. And it is really what that community in many ways was centered upon. Accredited, 1928 until 1966, this high school operated. You see the average student population there. One of the things that is said about Ridgeview High is that in terms of its academic attainment for its instructors, it had the highest amongst any school in Catawba County. In other words, the faculty at Ridgeview High had higher credentials than any other school, black or white. And it really has come down to, in interviews with people concerning the high school and that sort of thing, a belief that we, speaking from a Ridgeview point of view, we couldn't be equal, we had to be better. And I think that attainment level speaks to that as far as the way Ridgeview saw itself, and the way Ridgeview, the status that Ridgeview had as far as a school within that community. Now, let's get to the football program, because there were many outstanding programs in both academics and athletics. But what we're focusing here on is the 1964 team. Today, if you go to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association record book, you will still find Ridgeview there. Remember, they went out of business in 1966. But most regular consecutive regular season wins they have. 13 conference championships. You can see all the accolades here. They haven't lost, when we're coming into the 64 season, a regular season game since 1957. And so at that point, this is a powerhouse school. That's worth telling in of itself. But the 64 season is particularly interesting. Meanwhile, as far as players who have gone on, there were a number of players who went to a lot of places, but the really kind of the two stars, and they weren't from the 64 team, they were from earlier teams, is Ernie Warlick and Ozzie Clay. Coach Davis is in the Catawba County Sports Hall of Fame, and when they came over to play the championship game that season, they came to this campus, and that's the quote from the Lenore Ryan coaching staff when they saw this team. This gives you an idea, and this is something that we were just able to stumble on once we started doing our research, is a color photo, a colored team photo. You can see the setup for, and this isn't just the 64 team. During that era, you had a lot of players who played both offense and defense. And so there were a lot of stellar athletes on this team. One interesting tale that gets told that I think is incredible is the fact that Coach Davis would take all of his guys down to right around where Catawba Country Club is today, drop them off, and tell them to run back. That's the kind of ability they had. And you'll hear that when Reverend Luke talks a little later in a piece of video I've got about the two things that he believes that they had that no other team had, and that is confidence and conditioning. There's the season. Now this is the regular season. If you add all those up, it's 446 to nothing. It really wasn't, a lot of players said it really wasn't until they got about halfway through the season that they realized what was going on here, how badly they were beating everybody. And at that point, they wanted to keep it up. Coach Davis said, don't worry about that. Let's just get to the championship game and win, because when they played the year before, they had a similar record, and they got to the championship and they lost. Not only did somebody score on them, they scored on them more than they could score themselves. So at this point, you see this immaculate season coming together, but it's something that Coach Davis said he didn't, that wasn't the chief aim of this team. And they had been called untouchable before, mainly because the number of games that they put together in the fashion they had. But when they lost that game, and supposedly wasn't a popular guy, Ellis Johnson, when he said from the press box, the Untouchables have been touched. So all of these players on this team were very much aware of the situation of how they can take it all the way through the season and then in the final game lose, and in their opinion, they're with the season. So we go to the playoffs. East Spencer, they beat 28-0. Hamlet 16-0 when they win the North Carolina Negro Class AA Championship. That's the headline there, and it's quite a feat if you think about it. Here's some stats on members of that team. Doug Bumgarner was just, he had 60 and 70-yard runs. It was incredible, and these guys, in putting this together, are kind of nonchalant about it. But the feat is, just something that you do not see, that you certainly haven't seen since they did it in '64. Reverend Lutz tells a story about one particular incident in the Hamlet game, where the Hamlet team had them down on Ridgeview's 2-yard line, and they were about to score, and he gets excited about it, and he said, he starts talking. They've been trash talking the whole time, but he talks a certain amount of trash to the other team, says, you're not going to score, you're not going to do it, you're not going to get in, till finally John Hodge, who was the team captain, says, shut up and play some ball, and puts his head back into the game. Luckily, and they were also lucky as well as good, because they got out of that situation because the half ended. But the other team, and you can understand it's a championship game, it's best of the best. But they were able to escape that one and then go on to blanking them in the second half. Now, this is a shot of players from Newton's Central High School that I was able to pull from the Hickory Daily Record, because one of the problems that you have in telling this story is the fact that there is no footage. There's nothing to show this team in action, because in this PowerPoint I've got, there's every picture that is available of the Ridgeview Panthers, and this was their cross-county rivals, the Central High Panthers. Hornets, Central High Hornets. And so that's it. And that's going to make telling this story extremely challenging. Now, the other thing about this is that as far as high school football goes, one thing I noticed is that Hickory goes to the title game that year too, but they had lost some games. When Ridgeview goes, they went with that spotless record. And always in the Hickory Daily Record, as you would understand in that era, Hickory High got the top billing, even when Ridgeview was engaged in a much more impressive season. And also, it's important to remember, while it was appreciated within the community, what I still can't understand is race or no race. This story is, it's kind of to me like the polio epidemic. It is an incredible moment for Catawba County, and it just hasn't been told. It's still, probably Catawba County's best kept secret. If we look at what's going on in 1964, it is a tumultuous year for these young men to be playing football. In that you've got a lot going on in terms of civil rights. That's the Freedom Summer. That's when Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner are killed in Mississippi. You've got a number of things going on that that all communities in the South are dealing with. You've got integration that is trying to happen, but Hickory City Schools are still not integrated. Even though the Brown decision of 1954 is by that point 10 years back up the road. In August, right before they start playing their games in September, Lieutenant Colonel Mule Penn is going to be killed when he's driving back from training, reserve training in Georgia by 3 Klansmen. On those charges, they get off the first time. Number of things. I found a particularly interesting article from a Taylorsville pastor in the Hickory Daily Record talking about race relations that says it's not in the interest of blacks or whites to be integrated. Now, I think what that does is that helps us understand what kind of the general viewpoint of the day is. But in this situation, given these circumstances, and in a situation where the Hickory City Schools, even though they're under court order to desegregate, still have not, the stress that goes along with that doesn't really seem to affect this football team. They're about what they're about. And so it's a historical event that we don't fully, there's lessons I think that we can gain from it. It demonstrates that what a group of people can do when they put their mind to it, what excellence they can achieve. It is certainly about an important portion of Catawba County community and history. Achievements in the struggle, working together. I mean, there's so many great things about this story that I think that need to be told, that are instructive to students coming up. And that's why we want to do a documentary. And it's also why we want to do a graphic novel, because the stories that these men tell 50-some years, what is it soon to be, 54 years after the event, demonstrates what dignity can do in the face of all that turmoil that's going on. Now, in not having footage of this team, one of the things that we're going to try to do in telling this story is to create animation about it. And we have a grant from the Arts Council to help us do that. But that's going to go in, that look is going to go into the graphic novel as well as the documentary. That's what we're planning on telling. We're working with the Historical Association. Love to work with anybody, any other group that would like to have us to work with them. Now, let me give you an eye to show you a piece of this. This is something that we produced for the Black History Month celebration in, I have to do this differently, in February. You can't see it under that snow from last winter, but that was referred to, that space is the Dust Bowl, which is a reference to how little grass there was on that football field.
We were a great team with a lot of good players. Okay? There's been a lot of great players that came through this, but they were not necessarily as good a team as they were. So the difference is we played together.
Condition and confidence. We seemed to always be stronger in the second half than we were in the first. We had the ability to reach down and do what was necessary.
This season that we had, it was, I was just, it was a gift from God. That's what I think it is. Because I don't think there's any coach or any players that can come up with some kind of training program or strategy to go unbeaten, unscored on. We just don't have it.
We played our hearts out every game. We dominated. About halfway through the season, some of us realized that, we're unscored on at this point. And as we got close to the last few games, someone said, well, let's go and score on. Let's not let anybody cross our goal line.
It was an absolute honor for people up to Ridge. Your boys want to play football. We're playing the band. One of the others, because the band was so great. Ridgeview was a special place. It's time.
No score. Going the whole season, nobody scored. Jones Whiting Dash can't score. Don't stop him. Guy hit the ball, started running. And we just running all across the field trying to get on every tackle because we were trying to defend that break we had going so on. So everybody was backing each other up.
Hamlet was in a moment. They were at the 2-yard line for the first down. I'm the one that said, you guys, not going anywhere. I kept pointing, you're not going anywhere. And John Hodge, who was our captain, said, man, shut up and play the ball.
Friday night, everybody in town does not game. My game was packed.
One thing I will mention about interviewing these guys, there's only like 12 out of that 33-man squad left to talk to. So it's in many ways I parallel with the polio epidemic and the survivors there. The longer we go, the more likely we are to lose more. So we need to tell this story. Yes, sir.
Could that championship game with Hickory had been filmed, you think?
Well, they didn't. Let me be clear. They never played Hickory. They played Hamlet for the championship. Mm-hmm. It could have, but I can't find it. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's got a line on that, I'd love to know.
I would think any of those teams that were near contenders had training film. It may still exist. Because I know when I coached up in Maine, we had training film of teams that ordinarily wouldn't have had film shot.
Yeah, I noticed that the reporter was an Ellis Johnson.
That's what I was going to ask.
Is he still around? I wonder.
No, he was killed.
What?
He was stabbed and killed in his apartment. Gosh, it's been 20 years ago.
Was this the man who lived in I used to live in Southside, but living in
Kenworth Hall.
Kenworth.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Richard.
Yeah, this is a tough crowd. Can't let a phone ring, gee. Yes, sir.
When I first started to work in Hickory, I was assistant principal of College Park Middle School. Sam Davis was always there, substitute teacher, helping out, and he helped coach the College Park football team. And I got to know him really well, and he was filling me in on a lot of these things. One thing he told me I'd never heard before, that if there was a tie game, they didn't go to overtime, the winner was determined by which team had the most yards. And he said, and not for this year, but he said they lost the game, that they played really, really well because the other team had more yards than they had. I've never had heard that before.
Huh. I don't think there'd be any trouble with that this year, you know, because you got so many guys scoring from so many different ways. What's funny about this era is almost never did they get an extra point because nobody kicked in those days. They'd always run it in, and sometimes they, you know, occasionally they would, but for the most part they wouldn't. Yes, ma'am.
So were the championship games that they won, were they against other predominantly black schools or attendance? So there was no integrated championship game?
Nah. Because no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No.
No, I said no. There
Right.
weren't.
Short answer, no.
Right. I was just going to talk about integration when it does come, because in '65 it's voluntary and you have a few people coming over to Hickory High. But by '66, that's when the school system decided to close down the school and send everybody from Ridgeview over to Hickory. And then they won a state title that year too.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was an incredible team. But they made a very different decision, the school system did, than say the Newton Conover system, which took the old Central High School building and had all 7th graders go there in the years after. But in Hickory, they just shut down the school, which in some ways I don't think was good for the Ridgeview community because it had been such a center of what that community was about.
Well, no, I'm just going, if you don't know anything about football or whatever, that's unbelievable. You don't play a whole season. Everybody kind of talks about it, I don't know. You don't let somebody not score and get a whole season. That is not anything kind of like whatever. That to be unscored on in the whole season is unbelievable, period. I don't care what level you play on. And when they tell a story, and I'm listening to it, I'm shaking my leg, because I've talked to them, I know people, and it's the magnitude that you think you get, you don't get it. Because that's unscored on. That's unscored on. I mean, you can be undefeated. That's unscored on. Nobody scored a field goal. Nobody got a safety. Nobody accidentally fell across the goal line. Nothing happened the whole season, including the championship. And when people say that, that's not even. I mean, to try to tell a story, the magnitude.
Has it ever been done by anybody else?
And that's what you said. Somebody said they have not. Nobody. Who do you know that's been unscored on in the whole season won a championship? I've not ever read anywhere anybody else that did the whole thing. And honestly, telling the whole story. Well, I don't know, but it's not. It's one of those things. When I heard about it, I wanted to touch some of the guys. Doug Bumgarner and the guys I met. That is not. That is just. That's almost. Well, it's just
Also, you know what?
There's nothing that you can possibly say that can touch what they really did. And did you see the scores?
Yeah.
One like it was 12 something. There's 40 something, 30 something. The other team had 0.
One of us was 52.
Yeah, 56 to nothing, 40 nothing. I mean, the average is like 40 points a game that they score. You know, and I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Did at that time in the era of football, field goals were
1 point.
Were
3 points.
3 points. But nobody attempted that, or
they might have.
Well, tradition in the black schools and field goals was not a game. It was more important to score a touchdown. You didn't have anybody that kick, because technically, honestly, being a kicker was kind of like,
Yeah.
And that's why they always go for two after a score,
Yeah,
is they didn't have a strong kicker, and
Yeah,
so,
nobody wanted to be a kicker, that wasn't even
yeah. And to answer your question, there was a couple of teams throughout the United States that have done it, but not many.
My dad and two of my brothers played in Richmond, and two of my brothers were on the 64 team.
Oh, yeah.
You should have pointed them out in that.
Yeah, sure. Number 10.
Yeah. Well, Doug Bumgarner,
Oh,
the guy who ran the 29 touchdown.
But think of the focus of this team to, you know how we talk about, especially if you got a fantasy team, talk about garbage points that some other team scores at the end of the game when there's, it's been decided and it's just a few throwaway points. They didn't allow that. They played a full 60 minutes or 48 minutes of football. So they were focused in a way that I don't know that we understand today. In preparation, that conditioning, because they talk about being, and these guys play both sides of the ball. So your quarterback's also playing safety. I think he's cornerback. So at that point, those guys being that prepared and that ready to roll in the fourth quarter speaks to how prepared they were. I mean, how much effort it took. That Coach Davis was pretty relentless on them. The other thing we've talked about before, and some of the players have alluded to, is how the community took care of them. Because the community was watching those guys so that if they were out after 9:30, and because I asked Alan Pope, I said, well, could you even have a girlfriend? He said, not after 9:30 you could. So it's just, to me, it's an incredibly interesting story about how a community pulled together and supported that team. And the other thing that Alan Pope mentioned, it was not in that soundbite, but that their games were the best visited games of any community, black and white. So you had your most interracial time in Hickory during those football games because everybody came to see them. Now there's stories I have not been able to track down, and maybe you guys might have a better lead on this, but that if you think about 64 and an African American high school, and some of them talk about the inferior equipment they had, but that there was apparently a pipeline that came from Hickory Sporting Goods to that team of Coach Davis going over on Saturday mornings and talking to Odell Moose, and him saying to Coach Davis, what do you need? And so there was support from key people in the larger community to help that team because they recognized what a special program Coach Davis had, with that football team. And that 74 win speaks to what a great coach Coach Davis was. And apparently what had happened, the way it worked, is he was in charge of the defense. And Coach Scales, Roger Scales, was a younger guy, and he was the genius that came up with the offense. Tells one story of a play where they break from huddle, quarterback, center, and one other player come to the line. The other guys are kind of sitting over here, and it looks like they're confused. And they turn around as though they're going to walk back to the huddle to get themselves together. They go snap the ball. Alan Pope throws over here to the group of guys, and they just run it on. An incredible trick play. Didn't happen very often, but it's one of those that you go, wow, that's pretty slick. I'd love to have seen that. I'd love to have that on film. If you
I've seen it copied in college because our coach from Massillon High came to coach at Kent, and he ran that play.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know that it's original with Coach Scales. Some of the guys tell that it is, but it certainly was original for them. So
the other thing that I want to feel attached to what Michael was saying about what a feat that is that every team that played them knew after the first few games, they knew what they were doing to everybody else. So if you were going to prepare for a game, this was the team you'd prepare for.
Oh, yeah.
You did not want to be embarrassed.
Well, Reverend Luke says, you know, and you know how psychology is part of football too, that the previous season when they lost to Chapel Hill in the championship, the guys from Chapel Hill would come down the steps, clicking their heels in rhythm, singing, "Let's go down and get this thing over with. Let's go down and get this thing over with." And they adopted that, and apparently it unnerved, guys wouldn't tell it then, but they'll tell it now, that it unnerved those other teams to go, "Oh man, look at these guys coming." And the reputation precedes them. And so that only helped them when it came to the game. You know? So I appreciate you letting me come talk about it. Anybody that's got anything that pertains to the team that we can, you know, that we might be able to pull together for this, because this one really is going to be a ground-up effort, because with the polio epidemic, we had footage from the Corps of Engineers, footage from the National Foundation, footage from one of the dads who had color. We had something to work with. This one, we are truly starting from scratch. So,
What year did you graduate from LR?
86.
Oh, right. Your name sounds familiar.
I went on the 8-year plan. Coming out of high school, I took the first 4 years off.
Yeah, I was 76.
Okay.
An interesting quote I found on the film, and I find that it's pretty much the same today. No, wait. No.
That should be $1.
I was at least.
At least.
Y'all are merciless on this dollar.
You know, we agreed in this club that if one person was talking, unless you give an indication that you're trying to add something to it, that we wouldn't interrupt each other. We would have one person talking at a time, right?
I didn't have that in my notes.
That is documented in the film, no lie. So I think that there's a couple of folk over there who owe $1.
I will tell you, in 1964, I saw the Ridgeview and Morgan game. Okay, competition was terrible. It was so heated. Okay, when the game ended, everything broke out into a fight. They turned the lights off, flipped the lights, played the national anthem, and everybody just got out of the stadium.
That's what I need, because if you read the newspaper article on that game, they don't talk about the fight. But
Why
if you,
would you?
well,
I don't think they'll do it again.
well, but some people tell that the fight was the end of the game.
But it wasn't. And the game was a win.
See, I provided some documentation.
That's good and fine. That's good and fine, but up your dollar, sir. Let's start that arm, please. And do we have a junior fight?
Right, but some people have told that as when the fight broke out, it was like still in the fourth quarter, and you know, so that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of to help tell the story.
So it was after the game?
Okay.
It was apparently at the end of the game. And as I understand it, I mean, talking to the team, the members of the team, that it was the frustration on the part of the Morgan team that.
Yeah, they got that done well.
They kept blinking the lights, and they cut them off. National anthem, everything.
Okay. Wayne, I think you owe $1, please, before we adjourn this. I think the sergeant at arms owe $1. Say it ain't so.
He's not here.
He's not even here anymore.
Richard, thank you very much.
Hold on. No, it's not 8 o'clock.
It is.
Now, we got some things to do. Now, one, I thought that in the film it said that there was a pastor in Taylorville that said that integration is not in the best interest of black and white. Blacks are white. I find that to be the same mindset today. Between here and Charlotte, you can't find 10 integrated churches, top to bottom. So that's the same mindset. So 50 years hasn't changed. Next thing, Reinhardt got a point.
Make your presentation.
I'm doing a presentation with Richard Eller. Richard Eller, I thank God for you. I thank you so much. Man, you're quite a man. I know nothing bad about you. I've never heard anything bad about you. I mean, even if Thank you. Steve, I'd rather you be in this picture. You brought it.
No, you're good.
All right.
You used to being in pictures.
Yeah, but you're above the fold.
All right, so,
Wait.
we got a couple things we gotta say real quick.
Let's say them real quick.
Next week, district governor coming.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yes.
and bring a guest if you can.
Yes. Yes. And you had something you want to say real fast?
Rise Against Hunger, our application for matching funds has been approved
Yay.
if we choose to go forward with it. Nothing really starts for us until we send that check to Rise Against Hunger at the time they ask for it. Then we have to document it and prepare to receive the reimbursement.
Shout out, please, quickly.
Oh, where are we with the Viewmont check? Did we
And we
vote?
want to fund check?
It hasn't been discussed.
Okay, that's something that we'll discuss after next week's meeting. The governor has everything, okay? Other things.
Everything say and do.
Is the truth. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And Austin and Gavin, will it be fun? All right.